I don't know what's going on out there.
Okay.
Let's see. All right, I'm at the top of the hour. You ready?
It is top of the hour. It is noon on the East Coast and 11 where Brenda is. So welcome everyone to our first of many upcoming workshops. This is the first. The series is called Cut the Chaos, and they are HR workshops. My name is Amanda Painter, and I'm here with my business partner and co-author, Brenda Hare. We are, our business is Joy of Pursuit, and that may be how you have found us via LinkedIn or other methods. And we are also the co-authors of The Hiring Process, as well as 3 subsequent books in this series. They're on the shelf behind Brenda as well. So this series is the Team Solution series, and it takes you from hiring, onboarding, retention, and then exit through the entire employee journey. But today, a lot of what we're doing is going to come out of the hiring process because we're talking about recruiting and job descriptions.
You know what I love though, Amanda, that today, yes, we're talking about the hiring process and job descriptions, but so much of what we're talking about today builds on what's coming, right? For the employer as well as the employee, or even if it's not an employee, maybe it's a contractor, that it's coming for them, right? So the onboarding starts here, retaining the employees starts here, all of it, it all adds up. And so the job description is just so important and vital that people get it right, because it really sets the tone for everything that's to come for both sides.
Absolutely. I agree. So we're going to dive into it as far as recruiting. And in the current culture right now, recruiting's pretty challenging and the job market's a little crazy. So that's part of the reason we chose this topic to kick our series off with this year. And I'm
going to stop you and ask because I know we have some people on live, if you have a specific challenge that you're facing right now, drop it in the comments, because maybe we can answer it for you today, or maybe it's something that we can come back and follow up with. But there's so many specific, people are facing specific challenges, whether it's unqualified employees or, just an ongoing horrible interview process or whatever it is. So tell us what your challenge is in the comments and let us see if we can't get you some real practical answers. Sorry to interrupt you, Amanda.
All right. Yes. So, yes, definitely drop any comments, questions you have. Also in the comments, you will see I've posted a link. We're going to share a replay of today. So if for some reason you've started and then may need to cut out early, put in your email there and we will send you the replay so that you have all of the information.
Or if you want to share it with your team,
or share with somebody else that you work with, somebody else in your department, supervisor, whatever, that you think they would benefit from this, definitely share that with them. Also, we're going to be working from a tool today on creating a job description. We will send that out with the replay as well. So if you want to get your hands on that free download, be sure to put your email in there so that we can get it to you.
And we have a little bonus content that we're sending out as well, right?
We do. We have a bonus. So there will be another third thing, and we'll get to that in a bit as we work through this. So job descriptions. It all comes down to communication. And this is an ongoing theme through our books and through a lot of the work that we do with HR consulting, is we have to be able to communicate with our teams. And if we can't communicate, then they don't know what the expectations are, and we can't set them up for success. And a lot of times we don't think about communicating with our team before we've hired them. But really, the job description is your first step in communicating with your new hire, even though you haven't met them yet. So team communication begins before you hire. And this is where a well thought out job description is the first step of that communication. Can't assume expectations will be met if they're not properly communicated. The job description will lay the groundwork for the communication expectations. Accuracy in this job description is what's going to lead to retention. Because if someone thinks they were hired to do one thing, or if it wasn't clearly explained, but then they end up doing something else, that's where confusion starts, and they may not want to keep that job. So we've got to be sure that we're clearly communicating.
Absolutely. This is where partnering up, like a lot of people, when they go to write job descriptions, let's just be honest, everybody Googles it, right? And they're like, I just want to copy and paste somebody else's job description, which copying and pasting an outline is fantastic, but you need to be specific. And this is leading into Amanda's first point, really. Be specific about the problem you're trying to solve within your company. Right? If you're just copying and pasting someone else's job description for an admin assistant or a strategic assistant, or maybe an HR clerk or whatever it is you're trying to hire for, don't copy, think about your unique problem that you're trying to solve in your company and then fill in the blanks. Yes, you can pull some of the language over. Yes, you can use a good outline. We're going to provide one for you, but you definitely want to customize these things to your company. And so, Amanda, talk about a little bit about that, about figuring out the problem and determining that need for them.
Yes. So how do we determine the problem? And sometimes these slowly creep up on us that you begin to say, oh, we're continuing having an issue, like things are slipping through the cracks, or it may be a quality control problem. Others are very apparent. We've grown or we lost somebody and there is more work going to, then we have people to handle it. But to determine your needs, get real specific. What do you need? And so let's say it is that things are slipping through the cracks, that we continue to have error after error. And what's the problem? So you define what the problem is. And then we need to identify the solution. And the solution is in the form of a person. But what is that person doing? So if things are slipping through the crack, do you need someone who's providing quality control for a department or a specific section of your job?
Now you really have to identify the crack, right? Where is the crack? Is the crack in the process of delivering the product? Is the crack in the product? Is the crack in the customer service follow-up? Like, which part of the process is the crack really in? I think that that's a lot of times the problem, right? People are like, we just need to hire somebody to fix this, and they don't even know what they're really trying to fix or where the problem really is. But when they can determine, oh, wait a minute, the crack is when we deliver this product, we don't have quality emails going out with the product. We don't have good communication with our customers. So we need somebody who can write great emails, or we need someone who can, maybe you just need, like Amanda said earlier, somebody who can identify the cracks, and you need a quality control person. Where's the what I'm looking for? The hiccup, I guess. Where's it happening, right?
Yes. I'm reading through some of the comments here and make sure we hit some of these as we are working through it. And so we've defined our problem and we've identified our solution. It's not quite that easy, but that's your starting point. That's step one and step two. Now, I think this is an incredibly important part of this as you're working through this is, depending on your team size or the size of your HR department, if you have an HR department, or maybe you're a small company and you're kind of doing this on your own and winging it a little bit, get feedback from someone else. It doesn't even have to be someone in the HR realm. Now, some of you that work at larger companies probably have some more people to bounce ideas off of, or certain ways that this normally happens for you, but others may not. But collaborate, because what you feel like is the problem and the solution, other people are going to have more input for it. So be sure that you're collaborating and getting buy-in from others. These are the people who are going to be working with your new hire at some point, right? So you gotta see their perspective too. And I think that sometimes we get very siloed, whether it's small or large company, and we're just like, we need this, I know this is what I'm going to put out there. Be sure that you've circulated it around your team and get good buy-in.
Well, and I think the other thing is, Amanda, sometimes it's not people's gifting to pick apart a process, right? It's not their gifting to identify the problems, where that is one of my unique giftings is process development, process, integration, how things work together, where the ball's getting dropped. And that's a gift that you have as well, and especially in this HR realm. So whether you have a full team and you're still struggling, or you're a solopreneur and you're like, I don't even know how to bring on my first team member, having a consultant with a professional is a great first step. If you don't have a team or people to bounce off ideas off of, or maybe you've been bouncing them around for so long in this team, you're just like, these people nothing's happening. We're just recirculating the same information, where we keep hiring the same bad employees. We keep hiring the same wrong fits. it might be time to just have a quick consultation with Amanda or myself. The thing about a consultation is when we get in there, we're really trying to solve the problem. Like, we're going to pre-screen you for this. We're going to find out what your need is. And within that hour, we're going to try to solve that problem for you. So if you're thinking, oh, this is some long ongoing problem, some long ongoing process, I've got to sign up for all these hours, or I've got to buy this program and all this stuff. That's not what our consultations are. It's really like, what is the unique problem you have right now? Let's see if we can solve it in that 1 hour for you. So if you don't have that team, or you're, like I said, you're beating a dead horse, it's time to get some outside help.
Definitely. I think the next big thing, and while you're working through this process, you're not going to be ready to do this just yet, but I think it's important to list at the beginning of this and to discuss it, is put some thought into what you're titling positions. And some of that seems a little like, oh, okay, whatever. And if you're at a larger corporation, you may have some tighter policies on what you can name things. Now, I'm not saying they all have to be the silly, cheesy names, and some places those work. That's not the point. Brenda, I know you've got a few comments about this. Is something new you're pretty passionate about when it comes to titling a position.
Yes. So I've been in many different positions over the years where people want to just put a title on that they think fits you. But if it doesn't really resonate. So I was in a position where I ended up becoming the president of the company ultimately. So that tells you the skill set that I sat with when they were trying to label me as an admin. And I was like, I don't do admin. I don't do that. I can't stand admin work. Thank you, Lord, for not gifting me in that area. But they were, the word administration works great if you're a hospital administrator, if you're a administrator of a school district, that really gives you an idea of what's going on there. But in the round that they were trying to give me this administrator title, it did not fit. And I was like, this is confusing our employees. It's confusing me as what you're even asking me to do. They were labeling it an admin position when they were meaning to be an administrator position, and it was the wrong terminology for the industry. And so lining that up is really important too. So if you've got somebody in your, people are throwing around coach, consultant, all these different things. Are you coaching someone? Are you consulting them? There's a slight difference. There's different places to really pick apart the terminology. Don't get so hung up on it that you're like, I'm just going to call them whatever. At one of our, Amanda and I worked together, we came up with, we thought we were hiring an administrative assistant. We ended up hiring an old-fashioned church secretary. And we thought, this is not at all what this position is for. We've got to, what are we missing here? So we retitled the assistant position to be a strategic assistant. We needed someone who was forward-thinking, fast-moving, really strategic in their process management. And that's what we ended up with. We ended up with an amazing strategic assistant. And it was just tweaking the terminology and getting clear on what we really needed. We didn't need someone just to sit back and slowly take notes in a, in-person meeting. We needed someone who could take notes on the fly, online, while we're moving quickly, and retitling it really changed the perspective, I think, of it.
Yes. And a lot of these titles will include an action word, and we'll talk about action words more later in the job description, because those are so critical to when you're thinking about it. And when we put strategic in there and strategy, when an applicant is viewing this, that is going to pique the interest of those who know that they can think strategically. So that's one way you've got to, I know some are talking about having a hard time finding the right applicants and what do we need to do? And it really starts with the title. So make sure you have a title that when they look at this, it's like, oh, that's a little bit more intriguing. Mm-hmm. And it's not just about pulling words out that sound good. We really need them to apply to the position, but also you don't want it to be the exact same title that when you go on Glassdoor or any of the other whatever the larger platforms are, that there's so many with the same type of title. You want it to stand out in a little bit of a way, because those who notice that and see those things when they are looking for jobs are also going to be a little bit more inclined to maybe be better performers at the position, that it intrigues them and they're interested in it. And you've caught their attention by that, because you're essentially advertising, right? So it starts with the headline, which is the title.
That's really the key. What you just said, this whole process of writing a job description is really advertising your company and the need that you have. One of the things I think is really important in titles too, is to make sure that the title lines up with the pay, right? If you're titling a position that they're going to be a manager, well, then you better pay them a manager salary, right? A manager wage. Don't give people this expectation of responsibility in their title without compensating them for it, because that's going to end up to be a disaster as well. And then also, if they're not really, if they don't see themselves as a manager and what you're really needing is an admin, and you title it manager, you're not going to get the right person in the position. You're going to get somebody who's a grower and ready to tackle the world. And then they're sitting here going, you just want me to do what? I'm confused. You're really wanting an admin assistant, not a manager. So make sure that you're titling the positions correctly. Personally, we like the word manager for managing processes, not people. We like the word leaders for leading people. We believe that you should lead people and not manage them, but we know that processes need management. And when you're over a department, sometimes that's the title that you give, because they're managing all the processes within the department. So just be wise about the words you use and think about it from the person's perspective who's sitting in the seat, who's going to sit in that seat. Is it a title that's going to make them feel good about coming to work every day? Or is it going to make them feel like they're the low man on the rung and they're the bottom of the chain, and they're, or is it going to make them feel like, oh my gosh, these people value my skills? Because let me just tell you, there's nothing wrong with being an admin. There's nothing wrong with being a behind the scenes person. We need those people. I often joke that my sister and I are like twins. I'm the front face. She's the behind the scenes. She can do the same stuff I can do. She's an integrator. She can see the processes. She can do all that. She just prefers to do it behind the scenes with nobody bothering her. She can do 500 things at once, like behind the scenes. Ask her to come on here right now, and she's like, no, thank you. Like, she would not want to be, in front of people talking about this stuff. She can do it all. She's just, so having that upfront and knowing what you're asking the people is going to help you find the right person, because they're going to be like, I identify with that. I can be that manager. I want to show up and be that person. And there's nothing wrong with being behind the scenes or a front facer. You just have to make sure you're identifying the need and communicating it well.
Doing it, identifying accurately, and then communicating it well. So definitely. So once we've moved through that, when talking about advertising, which is essentially what we're doing with a job description, part of that is, why do they want to work for your company, regardless of what the job is? All of that aside, we need to lead in on the job description with, what do you have to offer? Not salary, not those things. What does your company have to offer? So a few things, and you'll see this on the tool that we will send out, and I will share my screen here and just show this for a couple of minutes too, is to step through a few of these things. What would you want to include about your company? And here are some examples. So think through, how is your company unique? And you may have a lot of this listed on your website, depending on your company. Or in team handbooks and those type of things. This is where you can draw that information from, but also make sure that information is really good and accurate and clear. So what are your company values? Do you have core values identified? Brenda and I could talk for hours on that, but to the point here is, make sure you identify some of them so that you can share them with the potential applicants to let them know more about your culture. What's the vision of your company? What's the ultimate goal? How do you get buy-in for showing up to do those daily tasks? And some of them may seem mundane, but what's the big picture? What do they feel like as a whole I can contribute to what this company is trying to aspire? Do you have any awards?
I like to think of it this way too, Amanda, because I know people listening and they're like, oh my gosh, I have to include all of this on a job description. Like, this is a lot of information. So you remember when Twitter was 144 characters? Like, go back to old Twitter days and think to yourself, I need to communicate this in 144 characters. Like, this is not the time to write a book. Like, all of these things should be in your team handbook. They should be on your website. They should be in a common place for your team to see. But on the job description, you want it to be tight, what we in the industry, tight copy, right? You want to write it tight. You want to get to the point, be specific. Don't use over fluffy words, all of these things, but just be tight and concise with it. And think, you might even, literally put it in and see how many characters it is and see how you can tighten it up. I know that for me personally, even like as authors, writing back cover copy is supposed to be a certain amount of words, right? And being forced into that really makes you write better. And so think about it on this job description. You don't have space to write this whole book about your company. Nobody wants to read it anyway. They just want the highlights of, what is this a fit for me? Do I want to work here? They're looking at it from, they're really interviewing you at this point, right? Before they even apply for the job.
Definitely. And this is how are you going to advertise yourself? And this is how they can learn about you without asking questions and prior to getting to the interview stage. If you have any awards, which is fantastic, this is a great place to share some of that. Are you best in the industry, best workplace, anything like that, that's really going to shine a light on your great culture? Share this there. And also, how big of a company is it? Is it entrepreneurial? Is it a family-owned business that was founded a long time ago? This also speaks to the type of inner community that you have at your company. So be sure to include that as well when you are talking about your company. Again, this should just be a few sentences and pare it down, but really be genuine with what you're stating, as opposed to, don't be lofty about, oh, we are the best place to work. If there isn't an actual award for that you've received, there's no need to put it. Let's be very realistic about what we're putting there so that we're not confusing someone of, oh, well, the job description said this, and this isn't what I'm getting into once I get there. So once you've moved past that portion of it, what does success look like? And I think this is where some job descriptions can fall short, is they get into the mindset of just listing bullet points, and I'm all for bullet points. I love a good bullet point list, but this is where we need to have a little bit more structure of a sentence in a paragraph of what does success look like. So as you've identified what your problem is and what the solution is with who you're hiring, what does the success look like for that person? Imagine your ideal person in the role.
And you even can write the words. I know, so I think it was Holly. There's a couple of people who have questions that this kind of pertains to, but success for this role looks like, you can even write those words on it. So when people are skimming, they're going to success. Obviously they want success, right? So they're going to read it. If that relates to them, that they're like, oh yeah, if that's what they need to be successful in this role, I can do that. You're going to get the right quality candidates for your position, versus if you're just putting, we all like bullet points on job descriptions, but sometimes when you have 9,000 of them, there's been people guilty, right? That it's just like 4 pages, a block of text for a job description. Nobody's reading it. You've got to put the information on there that people actually want to see, and that's going to help you. So I know Sydney had a question about that. Sydney's looking for really niche candidates. So that I would say is a key for you right there, Sydney. What does success look like in this niche for that candidate? And getting people to read your job description, like you can definitely highlight that portion of it. A lot of job descriptions, and depending on where you're listing them at, right, on some of these different platforms, will give you places for headlines, and will give you places for, sub headlines and things like that. Make those parts stand out for your candidates. Don't bury the lead, as they say in the industry, right? Don't bury the lead down. This is marketing. You really are marketing yourself here. And if you bury the lead down and you're telling them success way down at the end of the job description, they probably haven't even made it that far because you bored them to tears before they got there. So put that at the top. Put the reasons why they would want to work for you. Think about the exciting parts of your company and put those at the top, and then work down from there. Put the boring stuff more at the bottom, right? The qualifier things that we have to put on there. And I think Amanda's going to talk a little bit about those things here in a minute, like, including the salary and those things. You can bury those things because the people that are going to want to read those things are going to find them, right? It's kind of like what they say about websites. Nobody cares about your about at the top. If they care about the about, they're willing to go to the bottom of the page and look for it. It's the same about the salary. If they've made it that far, they're going to find it, right? They're going to look. But you want to put the leads, the real reasons why they would work, the qualifiers, if you will, the things that, not the skills that are qualifying the people, but the reasons why they would want to work for you specifically, those uniquenesses. So Sydney, I hope that helps you. And Holly asked a question about job titles and getting lost in the job boards?
Yeah. Great question.
Absolutely great question. Do you want to tackle that one?
I think, and this is great because as we talked about, we want to have good titles, but we don't want silly creative titles unless it's applicable to your company. And some of those do work. We've seen some of those that have been fantastic, but we don't want it to be the same as everyone else's if we can be more descriptive with it. And she's asking if those creative titles perform worse or better on the different job boards. And I don't have specific algorithm stats on that, but I think this is where partially for what Brenda was saying is, as long as you include the keywords at some point. Now, I'm trying to think of some of the silly job titles that we've seen. Now, one that's pretty popular is like Chief of Happiness, which is typically kind of an HR role, but it doesn't say anything about HR or human resources in the title. And that's okay as long as those words are in the rest of the description. So it'll still pull it for the algorithm. Now, if you have one that's another option of what you could do for these, and if you're concerned about algorithms with how you post your jobs, have your creative fun title that you feel like is going to grab attention, Chief of Happiness, for example, then you could put in parentheses, Human Resource Department. So it's not necessarily the title of the position that they're going to have, but that way that they can apply it to know that that's for that department, and the algorithm will still pull those keywords. And that way you're still not missing out on anything there. And I think that's an excellent question, Holly. Thanks.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to when we were talking about earlier about hiring for an admin assistant, which there's nothing wrong with that title. There's plenty of great admin assistants out there, and that's a needed position. But we were looking for somebody who was more strategic. They were still going to be someone's assistant. So we just changed the first, instead of being an admin assistant, we need a strategic assistant. So the assistant part is still there. So if they know they're an assistant, people who are assistants know that about themselves. They will be looking for an assistant position, right? They know they're not a manager. They know they're not a leader. They don't want to lead people. They don't want to be in charge of anyone. They just want to assist other people. That's what they're going to be looking for. So changing up the descriptor in front of it would be okay. You're welcome, Holly. Elizabeth asked a question about how many words should a job description be? And Amanda may have a specific idea on this. I'm more of a big picture thinker. Just one page. That's it. If it can't fit on one sheet of paper, you might be in trouble. That's my thought. Amanda, you have a more specific.
Well, we occasionally disagree with each other, but I think there's a couple ways you can look at this, and a lot of it depends on what kind of position it is. Now, I would say you need to have the majority of the most pertinent information be able to fit on the first page. Some positions may go over into a second page. I like to keep it within 2 pages.
Wouldn't you say also that there's a place for, like we said, the headlines, the overarching things that you're really looking for, and then there's a place to dive deeper. So we teach a screening process in the book, right? We teach a screening process in our course, and we walk you through. This is just the first time you're introducing yourself and your company to the potential candidate. This is a screening, right? If they can't make it past this, then you don't want to invest more time and energy with them. So this should be the first step in that. Think of it that way. Think of it as the ad that they're seeing on television, right? You see an ad for, let's just say, Nike out there, and they're enticing you with their just do it, and someone's running, and you're like, yeah, this is my brand. I want to be like that person. That's what you're creating in a job description. Yeah, this is the company I want to work with. I want to be like these people at this company. That's what you're creating in this. And then you're screening past that, right? There's more time for more in-depth talk about the core values. There's more time for specifics about the role. There's more time for, work environment conversations and all those things later. But here you're going to just touch on those points.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also depending on what type of platform you're using to advertise your position, it's also wise to create a blurb about what you're hiring for. And that will pull components from this. And back to a little bit of what Brenda said before is this is marketing. So if you have a marketing department that normally is not involved at all with your HR, which a lot of times those don't cross over, you should actually have someone from your marketing team, if you have someone, read through the job description and create a blurb for you. They know how to really be a little bit more creative with their writing than human resource professionals typically are. Not always, but typically that is the case. And they can help you get a little bit more creative with that so that you've got a blurb that's going to entice a little bit more. And once that's there, then they've clicked to read the rest or go to the full job description. And a lot of that also depends on what type of platform you're advertising your job on. So, but that's something to keep in mind, is try to create a little blurb that's catchy and will entice them. So
Yes.
we were,
I love that our audience today is helping each other. So yeah, they're answering each other's questions. And Holly, you're right on answering, I guess it's Aria. Ara, I don't mean to mispronounce your name. She asked a question about, she's on the other side, right? She's the applicant applying and she's not getting recruiters' interests. And so Holly helped out and said to be specific with each of her applications. And I think that that's it, right? So you need to respond to the problem that they're trying to solve. So when you're looking at the job description, identify the problem that their company has, what it is they're actually looking for, and then sell that aspect of what you do. So if they were applying to be our strategic assistant, they would be saying things like, I can strategically identify problems and solve them in a quick and blah, blah, blah manner, right? If they were applying for the admin position, they would say, I have very high attention to detail and love sitting in meetings where I can just take notes and, like they're two different people, right? So respond back to the real problem that they're solving. I think that'll help you. So Holly, you're dead on about tailoring each resume, the resume, the cover letters, if they're asking for that, each one should be tailored for the job that you're applying for. Because that's what, on this side of it, right? On the hiring side, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for people who have paid attention. And that's what a lot of the pre-screening is. Are you paying attention to what we're actually asking you? Or are you just randomly sending out your resumes over and over and over? This goes to the people who, and I know it's big, right? We follow some Instagram HR stuff that's hilarious because you guys hate filling out, and I'm one of them, right? That you're like, see resume, I already set it on my resume when you're filling out the application. That is a pre-screening qualification. Are you willing to go the extra mile? Are you willing to fill in the paperwork and it's a pre-screening. If you're just putting C resume, they're like, this person doesn't want to take the time to actually answer the questions. The reason why they ask those things a lot of times is because it's qualifying candidate one against another in a spreadsheet on their end, right? On the back end where we see it, we're seeing each person's answers together in a spreadsheet, which helps us screen through the candidates better than having to read every single resume that comes in. Once we screen through the spreadsheet, then we'll go to that person's resume and say, okay, let's take a deeper dive into this person. If all you put on your thing is see resume, let me tell you, you better have a darn good resume to drive me over there to see it, right?
Definitely.
More than likely, I'm not going to.
Yeah, it's so much of it is about effort. And I think this is where effort will meet effort. So on our end that we're creating this job description, let's really put in a lot of effort. And the applicants will see that. They will see that, oh, they were very descriptive about their company. They've identified what success looks like. And that was the section we were in. So I'm going to wrap that up before we move on to the next section. Is for success, I'll read to you a couple sentences of a job description example, which is included in the tools that we will send out after this is done. And state things like the ideal candidate is highly self-motivated, professional, and capable of managing and prioritizing tasks in a fast-paced environment. So tell them what the ideal candidate can do, and then wrap that small paragraph up, do 2 or 3 sentences with the goal of this position is, and then explain it so that they know this is the big picture goal. This is what the person will be working towards every day. Yes, there's going to be tasks A, B, and C that happen, but what's the ultimate goal that they're trying to?
I'll sneak in and say, and if you do that well, and you have the goals, then you're already set up for the onboarding, right? Because now you've told them what their goals are. Now you're already set up to helping them achieve the goals because you've already identified the goal. So you're that much more ahead of the entire HR process just by identifying it now in the job description. Amanda, you said something about effort meaning effort. And I know you wrote a blog recently on that. So people can find that blog post over on our website, but you wrote a blog, last week or the week before about that, right?
I did. I'm trying to think of which, all of the blogs since the holidays and everything have run together. But yes, it is out there.
Yeah.
Definitely.
We can drop that link for them here in a bit so they can follow up with our business blogs and see that.
Yes. Our business blogs, we post them on our website, but also we post them here on LinkedIn, and you subscribe to that. It's every other week, and it has the same headline as our workshops do, which is Cut the Chaos. So Cut the Chaos newsletter, and that comes out every other Friday. So a great, we give some pretty good tidbits and tools for business functions. A lot of it's HR focused, but some other business functions as well. So we've kind of hit the high points of the resume, a little bit more descriptive parts and selling. Now we need to kind of get into the very specifics, and let's talk about the job responsibilities. What will this position own? What are they in charge of? These can be projects, tasks, programs. And this is where we talk about the action words that I was talking about earlier. And I'll share my screen again and show just a couple of these, and I'm sure Brenda will have some good action words to share as other options as well. So when we're talking about job responsibilities, on the right here, we have an example that someone would manage individual calendars for the CEO and CFO, maintain accuracy, schedule meetings, coordinate travel, prepare. So you'll see all the action words here. Brenda, what other action words come to mind when you think about these job descriptions we've written?
Well, it's funny what immediately came to mind for me, and I think this might be mind-blowing for some people. And I think in this economy where the hiring is difficult right now and matching candidates is difficult, this specific position that we hired for, strategic assistant, this person actually worked with 3 people. They were the assistant for 3 different people. And I think that that's important in this culture, because everybody, you get in a company and then you're like, oh, so-and-so needs some support over here, let's hire them assistant. And so-and-so needs some support over here, let's hire them an assistant. You don't necessarily need to do that. One person could potentially handle several people in the company, as assisting them, supporting them, depending on obviously the amount of work and the amount of business that you're doing. But really streamlining your team is so important. And so supporting, right? Support is a word that you could use an action. They're going to be supporting the person that they need you to support them. They're going to be, accurately, I think it's a adverb, not a verb, but depending on the position, accurately doing things is important, to keep them in mind that they're accurately recording and managing events, accurately communicating with the rest of the team, these types of things. If you're, communication's key in every department, but if that's really a role that they're playing and they're not just behind the scenes, part puller or, industry, what is that? Assembly line person. They're not that person, right? They don't necessarily have to communicate with their mouth. They're communicating with their actions. But if they are communicating with their mouth, that may need to be on that job description. If they're communicating via email, it may need to be on there. Like, be specific, communicate verbally, communicate written, communicating with outside vendors. Is that something that they're doing? Like, get specific about the type of communication that's happening. If they're going to be a front-facing person for your company, they're going to be interviewing vendors or working with clients, that needs to be on there. In what capacity are they working with that person? I think it's important to think through that a little bit, because just because someone can talk a lot doesn't mean that they're good at representing your company well. And so you need to make sure that you're qualifying them by who they're going to be talking to and what they're going to be doing. Because maybe the thought of, oh, I can communicate with a customer just fine, but oh, now you're asking me to communicate with a C-suite or an executive buyer, that's a different person. So really get specific about the kind of communication, who are they communicating with?
And that's their responsibility. You will own that responsibility. And we use that terminology a lot as far as what do you own? And someone who owns that type of communication, be very specific about it. So use the action word, but get down and be specific about who it is that they're communicating with, or what they're owning or implementing or designing, whatever that action is. So
yeah. And I would say you just probably gave more action words right there than I did, implementing, designing. Here's the thing. If you are at a lack for action words, literally Google verbs for, and if you can't think of the right one, like put it out there and see. Don't get crazy being all, highfalutin with your words, but find the word that fits really what you're using. And you can just Google verbs and find out what's coming up. You're looking for the action words that describe what these people are going to be doing for your company. So get creative, but don't get overly creative where you're drafting a poem instead of a job description.
Good description. This is where this is the part of it you really got to dig in. And because a lot of bullet points, you could say, oh, they work with this team or work on, not with, not on, not work on. They are supporting, maintaining, collaborating, because the more descriptive you can be there, the clearer the job description is going to be. Yes. And will pique the right interest from the right people.
Yeah, I would say that that's a very good point, Amanda. So if you look at your current job description that maybe you're working on or have worked on, or for Amanda's point just now, that you're drafting, right? We're not working on it, we're drafting or creating.
Crafting.
Take a look at your bullet points. If they all start with the same word, if it's all work with, and this goes to the same with the young lady that was applying for a job. If on your resume, you're saying, I did this, I did that, I. Okay, change it all up. If you're saying managed this, managed that, managed, okay, find another word for managed, find another word with walk, like use your action words and swap them out with what you actually did. Like just being, we as writers, we share a week word Wednesday. Today's great. And I recently submitted for this speaking engagement, and someone said something, they changed my verbiage up, and they said we would provide a great work culture or something. And I was like, no, don't use the word great. It's such a weak word, because that's not what we're after, right? We're after a healthy culture. We're after a culture of worth in the workplace, not a great culture. What does that really mean? Great it means a million things to a million people. So be specific by just changing up the word. Google it. You'll find good words.
Yes, definitely. All right. So the next two portions of the job description that, depending on how you do it, you could title these different things, and we kind of have our standard template that we go from, which is in the tool that we'll send out. So as you're working through this and looking through this after it's sent out, we have the two sections, and one is preferred skill set and the other one is job requirements. And the difference between these two are, one, these are negotiable. Preferred skill set, it's a negotiable. If you have all these, you're probably going to raise yourself to the top of the stack of resumes. If you don't, we'll still consider it depending on everything else. On the requirement side, these are the non-negotiables. And I think it's really important to separate these two when you're listing them in a job description. It makes it a lot easier for the candidates to understand, oh, those requirements, I got all that. Some of these preferred, I may not have. Or you're going to have some self-select out, which we love it when they self-select out. Now, do we want to have lots of resumes when we put something out there? Yes, but we only want resumes of people who are actually qualified. So it's not necessarily the number of resumes, it's about the quality of the resume. So we want people to self-select out. We want them to look at what these non-negotiables are, what are the requirements, and they look at those and they're like, nope, I don't have all of that. I'm not going to apply, because that saves you time, and time is money. So be very specific in how you separate the two. It makes it much easier for the applicants to see, okay, and I've got all this. So when I respond with my cover letter, I can play up this part that, like, all of those requirements, I've got that, I've got experience with it, and it's good to go.
And that brings up the point of, for non-negotiables, for the, required, a lot of companies will put, a 4-year degree, a master's degree, whatever, in their non-negotiables. Be mindful that you're going to drive off a lot of candidates with that could potentially be great candidates. Yeah. So is it actually a required, or is it something that's preferred? So really look at that, because I've been the president of many companies now, and I am the CEO of this company. I have a 2-year degree. I have the experience necessary to run a company. I have the experience necessary to help my clients. but I don't have a 4-year degree. Why? Because I chose not to go that route. Amanda, on the other hand, has the 4-year degree. So you don't necessarily always need that but I understand the reason why companies have it there. And just FYI, the culture is moving away from 4-year degrees. People don't want to have 4-year degrees. Everybody wants to. I mean, you're looking at people who want to get out there and they've been working since they were in high school because they had to buy their own cars. They've been working all these times and they don't want to go to school. They just want to get the job and move on with their life. And now you're telling them, oh, I can't hire you because you don't have a 4-year degree. They may be a great candidate. They may have been working since they were 12 years old and they may be a fantastic candidate, but you're ruling them out because of one qualifier. Yeah. So put it in the right category. If you're a doctor, if you're hiring for a doctor, absolutely they need those degrees. That is a required.
That is a non-negotiable.
That's a non-negotiable.
A degree, believe me, I know, as I'm sure many of you do, we know people who graduated college with us that just because they got that certificate doesn't mean that they're qualified. So I think that's a huge part is when you are talking about these are the requirements for this position, and that's what you've always put on your job descriptions. That's what your company's kind of always done, copy and paste. Why don't you dig into those a little bit and really think on it and compare it to what does that ideal candidate, back to the beginning, what do they do? What does success look like for them? And how do those requirements actually play into that? Because if it doesn't, then maybe you move that to a preferred and you can change your applicant pool just by shifting something from a requirement to a preferred. Or maybe something needs to shift from a preferred to a requirement because you're starting to see a lot of applicants. You're like, oh, wow, they're all missing one thing. If that's a constant trend on qualified applicants, then you need to move it to a non-negotiable that you have to have this to apply. And it'll shift what you're dealing with as far as the talent looks like.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's important for people to understand what the degree is for, right? Because if they're asking for a 4-year degree in general, that should probably just go right to preferred skill set. But if you're asking for a preferred degree in business because you're hiring this person to go into a business position, that makes more sense and should probably be in. So if it just says a 4-year degree in the required, you better take a deeper dive into that and look at it. What is the degree that you're actually asking for and why? And that'll really help you determine whether it's preferred or a required skill set.
And on that topic, as far as talking about skills, these non-negotiables and negotiables can be more than just skills. They can be the experience with tools that you have. They can be characteristics that you also have. So this is something that's really important. And a lot of times that's going to need to go under the non-negotiables. Are you incredibly organized? Are you good to be social and talk to a lot of people? That's not everybody's skill set. And that's a non-negotiable. They can have all of the other qualifications, but if they don't want to be a front-facing person, then they can't be hired to be a front-facing person. So we need to be very specific about that, of what the expectations are and what's not negotiable. They've got to be able to get out there and speak to somebody, then that's a non-negotiable, especially for sales or whatever the position may be there.
I would say we haven't talked much about location, remote working versus non.
The next one I was going to go into is talking.
I think that
environment.
Yeah, that needs to be part of that too. If it's a negotiable or non-negotiable for them, to work from home, not work from home. If they're working from home, do they have to show up with their camera on? Big pet peeve of Brenda's.
Yes.
Big pet peeve. Turn your camera on. Don't show up to my office with your bag over your head. Do not do it. And those kind of things need to be on there, the requirements for those things. And so, Amanda, dive into a little bit of that, the location, the other things. And I know before we run out of time, we've got to get to the salary issue because that's really an issue these days.
Yes, that's next on the list too. So working environment. So you're going to talk about your location and your expectations, and that can be very different these days. We have in office, we have fully work from home, and we have hybrid. And all of the studies and opinion polls and everything will show you right now, people want to work from home still. It is a lovely thing. Not everybody wants to work from home, but a lot of people do. And we're not here to debate whether or not we should be doing that everywhere, but we need to be very specific in our job descriptions, because that will narrow the applicant pool depending on what the requirement is. And while this is pretty far down in what we've talked about today, depending on what you have and given the current situation with trying to hire people, if it's a full work from home opportunity, which is what most people want right now, I would suggest listing that pretty high in your job description so that it will catch the eye of the right applicant. So when you talk about if it's on-site or not, what does it look like? If it's work from home, what are the expectations? Do they need to be at their computer from 9 to 5? Is there a certain window of when they need to be available for meetings? If you're in person, is there uniform requirements, physical requirements for lifting? Will there be days, nights, weekends? Be very specific, get into there, go back to your first job yourself, when you were applying for jobs, when you were in high school or college, whenever that was, and think about all the questions that you have. This is your opportunity to answer those questions without having to have the correspondence with them all the time. So list it all through there. And if we're talking about remote work, also think about what do they provide versus what you provide. And this is somewhere that companies that are like, I'm going to hire a remote worker, but they haven't thought through all that stuff. So be sure to think about, do they supply the computer, the internet, who's paying for those things? All those details need to be listed in the job description.
And I would say, even as far as cell phones, a lot of companies these days will say they're providing a cell phone, but then they think they own you 24/7 because they've given you a cell phone. You should answer it 24/7. Don't be that company, first of all, and then have parameters around that. And maybe it's the job description where you put it if it's that important, but maybe it's the next step. Another thing is, if you're hiring, this goes a little bit into the interview process, but if you're hiring for a remote worker, you should probably interview that person remotely first. If it's a hybrid situation, you want to have them come into the office as well, but make that maybe step 2, interview them remotely first. It's going to save you time and them time. Make the second interview where they're coming into the office. I'll tell you, remote interview is so important when you're hiring for remote workers, because you get to see how they show up. Amanda and I have interviewed some people and we have seen it all, right? We've seen people come in their workout outfits, and we've seen people come in like they literally just came from a jog with their hair all whacked out. And we've seen people sit in beanbag chairs. And I mean, we've seen it all. And it's like, while that may be cute for some cultures or some work environments, it wasn't cute for the position we were hiring for. And so make sure that those things align, like you're looking for that. If the position requires them to show up on camera remotely, they need to show up on camera remotely from the start professionally. Now, if the position doesn't require them to show up on camera remotely, except for private meetings with the team, maybe they're data entry and they're from home and the dog can be barking, the baby can be crying, because it doesn't matter. That's a different story than you're going to have to show up on a Zoom professionally dressed with clients here. The baby needs to be quiet. The dog needs to be, outside, whatever. If that's the case, you need to put that in there. Do they need a quiet working environment from home? Do they need, those type of things? You've got to be clear on it, because if they're at home, they're a mama with 3 kids running around and they got the dog and the doorbell's ringing and all this, and you're asking them to sit in a meeting with clients, probably not the position for them. Now, it's different if that they can control those things, but for the most part, you need to be clear upfront with your expectations, or you'll be disappointed in the future.
Yes, definitely. And then big piece, and this does relate to Brenda mentioned blog that I wrote, I think it was last week that it was up, was pay. Now we have so many people who do not list pay and salary items on the job description, and there's new legislation in some areas where you are now starting to be required to do so, or at least to disclose it. And the article that I posted last week actually gives you 4 reasons why you should do it anyway. So list the pay. Now, it can be a range. It can be, if it's hourly, here's the hourly range, or here's at least the starting amount. This will get you better candidates that will want to work for that. And it's going to save you time and energy, because you don't want to go through the entire hiring interview process with someone to then find out that they're not willing to work for what you can offer. So list the pay. if you think it's super competitive and you want to put it at the top, put it at the top, because I think in this current job market, that should be a great thing that you're using to entice them. And it shows I'm putting forth the effort of telling you, this is how much the pay is going to be. You don't have to search for it. You don't have to get in an interview. You don't have to ask the question. I'm going to go ahead and tell you. And that's going to be very enticing to get more applicants for the job.
Absolutely. There, in the book, we talk about, you can add it if you don't put it in the job description, if it's not legislation right now in your state, and you don't put it in the job description, you can put it in the next step, which is a screening process that we teach in the book. You can put it there where they're answering some general questions. And one of those questions is this salary range or pay range, fit your need? You can ask it there. I love the fact that legislation is now telling people to put it in the job descriptions, because it's really about equal opportunity employing for everyone, right? So there's not this pay gap between races or, male, female, whatever. This is the pay range, period. And if you qualify for this job, you're going to get a pay range, a salary in this range. I really like the fact that the legislation is leaning towards that. But if it's not in your state right now and you don't feel comfortable, maybe you don't want your competition to see, maybe you don't want that to be the leading factor people apply, whatever the case is for why you don't want to put it there, you can put it in the next step, which is a screening process that we teach. And that'll really help screen out those people, like Amanda said, that you're not wasting your time with them. And when we talk about time in the interview process, you guys know, right? It's not just you're sitting here right now. You've invested an hour of your time with us. Now you're going to go write a job description. That takes time. Then you're going to go through the resumes, right? You're going to go through that. First, you got to get it up on the job board, right? That takes time. Then so there's all these time factors. And the more you can trim that off, the better you're going to be in the long run. And this is just one of those ways to do it right up front. Put the salary out there. It's either going to work for them or it's not.
Yep. So, and then at the end, we've kind of covered all of the main portions. At the end, you want to have your, how do you apply? Obviously, if you require a cover letter, any of those specifics, and we have examples listed on the tool that we're going to send out here shortly. And then obviously,
I think Elizabeth read your job description or your blog post. Elizabeth just answered, and transparency, which builds trust. And that's exactly what you said in your blog post. Absolutely, Elizabeth, you're dead on.
Transparency builds trust, which this is going to, what are we doing? We're communicating. We're building a relationship with this person that we are going to hire at some point. So being transparent with them up front is a great way to really create a great, I keep saying great, which I'm not supposed to, I need to be more descriptive. A healthy dynamic in a working relationship, and transparency is a great way to do that.
Absolutely.
So then obviously you want to do any legal or compliance issues, consult with your team on what you need to have there. Equal opportunity. If your job does require a background check or drug screening, include that, because that will help select out those that won't participate in those. So you definitely want to do that up front too. So just to recap, we'll drop the link again to get the replay from this talk today. Thank you all for great questions. We've had good interaction. It's been very good. And I'm going to drop that link again. So we will send you the replay of today so you can watch it again or share with teammates. The worksheet that I've shown that you can take now yourself and create your job description. And Brenda, do you want to tell them about the third thing we're going to send?
Yes. So we have an assessment actually that helps you determine the how your culture is in your company. So you can take it, you can have your team take it if you have a team already. And it will just, if you have a team, no matter the size of your team, it will really help you open your eyes a little bit to what's going on in your company. But we have an assessment that you can take, and we're going to send you that as well. I'm very excited about some of the next steps that they can take, Amanda. So you want to tell them about some of the next steps they can take if writing a job description overwhelms them, or if they need some more support with this, what can they do next?
So we have a variety of tools that you can use. So first is you can pick up the book, The Hiring Process, or any of the other books in the Team Solution series. The link is there. It's on our website. If you found us on LinkedIn, you can get to it all there as well. So these are on Amazon and any other book retailer. So The Hiring Process, there's an entire chapter dedicated to creating job descriptions. It discusses a lot of what we did today, even more in depth. And there's a lot of tools involved in that as well.
Yes, there's a toolbox with each of the books, so you would get even more tools to go along with today's discussion.
The next one is we also have an HR course. It is broken into 4 segments. You can buy the entire course, or you can just do one of the segments. And the first segment is on hiring, which is great. So there is a hiring portion of the course, and I dropped the link for that. So it's going to walk you through, and I'm narrating and stepping you through all the tools of that course. You can do it at your own time, but it's like having somebody there to guide you through the entire process.
Let's talk about the investment though, because the investment is very small compared to what you're getting out of it. So no matter this, we did this on purpose because we know we work with, from solopreneurs who are very, very new at starting to build a team all the way to companies who have up to 500 employees. So with this, the investment for the 4-part course is only $129. That's it. $129. The course is yours forever. It's there. And then if you just want the hiring portion of it, it's $47.99 for just the hiring portion of it. So very affordable for solopreneurs and very affordable for companies that do have an HR department. You could buy the course for your entire team, have everybody going through it and working together on the processes and building out a great new HR structure for your company. So no matter where you fit on that spectrum, it's ideal for you. I personally, when I sit through things like this, I like to know the price right up front, because I'm like, don't ask me for no $7,000 now that, not the case here, right? This is something that's very affordable, and we want to see just healthier cultures in the workplace and help people get the right candidates in the seat. So
yes. And I think that's a great thing about the different options we have. I mean, we have a book. It's depending on if you want Kindle or hardback, variety of prices, but you can get it very affordable to get a book and guide you through. The course is kind of the next step up. And then last is I do consultations, and the link for that is there as well. I love working one-on-one with HR professionals or small business owners to really dig in, and I can help you craft that job description or look at your HR department as a whole on how you can improve it and really create some tangible steps that you can implement to really create change with your company.
The other thing I want to say about that, Amanda, because I know some people are probably sitting there going, wait a minute, I don't have an HR department and I'm the only owner and I don't have time for this. So I think I love the fact that usually in small companies, there's someone, right? It's usually the spouse of the owner, or maybe it's the assistant, or some companies use the finance person, whatever it is, they'll kind of squish them into this role of, hey, can you hire somebody for me? And those people really need this series. They really need this course, because those are the people who are sitting there going, I know we need to hire somebody, but I don't know the first steps in doing it. So if that's you, or someone who fits that role, send them our way. We would love to help them and work with them. And that's where our consultation with Amanda really comes in, because she can help you identify who on your team could be the HR seat, even though they have other seats, right? Because like we talked earlier, people can sit in several different seats on your organizational chart, where you just want to make sure that it's specific and they know what seats they're sitting in. And so we can help them, even if they're your strategic assistant, we can help them be your HR representative as well. By
the tools they need. It's all about, especially with those small businesses, when you're wearing more than one hat. I've been there. It's happened to be a lot in my career, which is actually what motivated me to start this book series. And let's get them the tools that they need. And from our books, course, consultation, and then free content from our website, our blogs, and our newsletter, we've got a lot out there. So absolutely, that's a wrap on recruiting and job descriptions. Again, this is going to be a series. The next one is going to be something that is onboarding focused, and we're going to do one each quarter. So subscribe to our Joy of Pursuit page on LinkedIn to get those updates, or if you've opted in and shared your email address with us, we'll be sure to send you an invitation for those things moving forward. And thank you to all of the attendees today. Great interaction, good, thoughtful questions. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here, guys. We appreciate you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.